welcome everybody to Point of Jew. Just want to give a quick shout out and marginal apology to Brian, who actually has my highest watched episode on YouTube thus far. So, Brian, thank you very much. To everybody else, go watch everybody else's stuff too. Get those numbers up there. Dice and Tommy and Ashley and everybody else deserves the views as well. I'm just saying, spread the love. But no, in all honesty, I'm just bringing that up because found out today that the audio for like iTunes and Spotify and Podbean and everything didn't do what you'd want it to do in terms of load or work or anything. And that's because my wife actually wanted to listen to that episode today. I was like, it is not on iTunes. And I was like, that's weird. iTunes can take a day or two, and just wasn't working. So that was awesome. But I got everything loaded, and at least as of this, Spotify's working, Google's working, Podbean's working, and then hopefully by now it's up on iTunes too, in case that's your favorite methodology to listen. Personally, I think YouTube's the best way to watch, because then you get to physically see this. And isn't that what this show's really all about? Physically just paying attention to the moneymaker. But in all honesty, I'm excited for this episode too. Not a purposeful theme, but we got some wrestling related topics today, even though the main reason Joe Lavender's on the show is he is a filmmaker. He also acts, produces, writes, the cinematography, anything film involvement Joe does. He has a movie coming out in the next couple months here called The Marks, which I thought was The Mark, which it was apparently at one point. So not completely off base. For those who are not as obsessed with wrestling as myself or some of my past guests, Mark in wrestling terminology is basically the intended audience. It's a carny term. Carny term, fun, right? Like in olden carnival days, the mark were the people who are going to believe the acts and get taken in and spend the money. That's a really enduring term to have for somebody. So that evolved as wrestling evolved for, the people who get super emotionally invested, or the it's still real to me, damn it type of individuals. Not to be confused with SMARK, which is not an abbreviation, but a shortening of smart mark, somebody who is aware that they're kind of supposed to be taken in on this emotional journey and subject to the believability of the world of wrestling. But they're like, in this day and age, to some degree, I would argue anyone is a smart mark. People who can go online and read, spoilers or behind the scenes type stuff. They're still marks because they'll act like they're in the know, but they're not. And that's, it's not a bad thing. I would also argue that even wrestlers can be marks, or even people in the business can be marks or smarks, because, if you're very exuberant about the wrestling world, when I was training, you can be, if you're a wrestler, you can be a mark for yourself. You can be so taken in by what you do. And then, if you eat, breathe, and live wrestling, you can be a mark. It gets taken as a negative word for wrestling fans, but I think I think there's those that would agree with me that it's not necessarily always a terrible or bad thing. So it's a little inside baseball, right? As they say. But Joe and I get into wrestling, we get into his film, we get into actually filmmaking, we get into acting, we get into Ghostbusters, we get into conventions, which I've been to my fair share of and enjoyed as a spectator. So there's a lot to digest in this episode, and I'm glad I got to talk to him. He's the first person that I've interviewed that, I've messaged him here and there on Facebook to get things set up and what have you, but everybody I've interviewed to this point has been somebody that either I am directly friends with, or I've interacted as that they're a friend of a friend or something. And Joe is a friend of a friend, but hadn't really had much, this level of interaction with him. So it was very interesting to learn a lot of things. And regarding his world of filmmaking, he's in the Atlanta, Georgia area. I did not wear this Cobra Kai shirt because they shoot in Atlanta. I didn't even know that actually until this episode. I learned that. I was looking for a wrestling based t-shirt and could not find one of like the 3 I still own. So it's like fighting, filmmaking, Cobra Kai, Karate Kid. So that just kind of blended in nicely. But I had a lot of fun talking to Joe. Was able to tell another story or two that I didn't get to tell in some of the past wrestling related podcasts we did here. So I was pretty excited for that. And it was an easy conversation to have. And, you know, I like wrestling. I like filmmaking. I've written some really crappy scripts in my time. I didn't get into that because I haven't done anything. So it's not like I have any direct knowledge to add to any of this. So just as an objective listener, kind of digesting and adding in a couple anecdotes and thoughts and things when I could. But I think you'll all really like this. So sit back, grab a beverage if you need to, or a snack, and enjoy this week's Point of View. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Point of View. I'm really excited today to welcome, we got screenwriter, actor, director, producer, and CEO of Black Flight Studios, Joseph Lavender. Joe, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, one of the reasons I know we're happy to have you is it's been kind of a couple wrestling related episodes in a row. I did not do that on purpose, but you have a new film coming out called The Mark, right?
That is, well, it's actually called The Marks, and there's a funny story behind why that is the name. It did used to be called The Mark, and we changed it. And there's a story behind that, but we can get into that if you want to know more about that as we talk. But yeah, I have a feature film about backyard wrestling / indie wrestling called The Marks that is currently in the very, very final stages of post-production. It should have been out a couple of months ago, to be honest. But, you know, we have this thing, I don't know if you've heard of it, the virus pandemic, that's pretty much canceled everything. So we're just taking our time now and trying to make sure that everything is good before we release it.
Well, that makes sense. Get everything kind of finalized and going to be released, early part of 2021?
That is what we're aiming for. We're still working on the last bits of music. There's a lot of, with a wrestling movie, well, with a movie like this in general, there's not as much of like a soundtrack score, like cinematic stuff. It's almost all like practical music. And especially since you've got like wrestlers, so there's wrestling themes and stuff that we had to write because we can't use copyrighted stuff that we don't have the rights to use. So we had to, we're writing almost all of it from scratch. And then I've used some local bands and things like that. But the music is that's what we're working on. Everything else is done.
Wow. And it's a subject that I think hits home to you. You used to be involved in wrestling, right? You did professional wrestling for a little bit?
That is correct. Yeah. So I'm from South Georgia, so that's where I grew up. And so if you know anything about pro wrestling, you know that professional wrestling is just huge in Georgia in general, but like is really big in the South. And so when I was a teenager, all I did was watch WCW all the time. And I wanted to be a wrestler, and I ended up meeting this promoter that used to come to town to run shows in my high school gym. My dad worked for a newspaper, and somehow they got him involved, and so I ended up helping them. The promotion was called Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. It was ran by Dusty Rhodes, and I did some just like promotional grunt work for them in exchange for training that never happened. And then I ended up meeting someone else while I was doing that offered to train me, and I ended up training in a barn with a bunch of other guys for a year. And then I wrestled all over the Southeast for about 2 or 3 years. I didn't last very long because I got hurt, as you do if you do that for a very long time. But I met a lot of people, and I made a lot of connections while I was doing that. So I was able to, that's part of the reason why the movie came about, is because I had access to a lot of stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily have access to.
Well, so that's pretty amazing that was able to kind of influence you and kind of build those connections to allow you to do this film. And I know you've done some other projects, you've done some horror films and some other things as well. How did you kind of, was filmmaking and producing kind of born out of just being interested in entertainment like that in general? Were you doing those things concurrently, or, how does that kind of play into it as well?
Yeah, so basically, I feel like I've always been into just the idea of entertaining people because before I even did wrestling, I've always been a musician and played in bands and stuff. So I've always performed. But the wrestling kind of came out of that too because they all kind of go together, I guess. And then when I could not wrestle anymore, or chose not to wrestle anymore, rather, and I didn't really, the music wasn't going in the direction I wanted to. One day I noticed that there were all these trucks and tents and stuff. And I'm from where I'm from is like tiny South Georgia. There's like 400 people. Like nothing happens there. And I saw all these big trucks and tents, and I was like, "What is this?" And it turned out to be the movie called The Crazies. That came out a long time ago, horror movie. And I managed to get on it as an extra. And pretty much after that, I was like, this is awesome. And this is where I belong. And so after that, I started doing my own stuff because I lived too far away from anywhere where there was anything going on. So I just did my own stuff. And, 10, whatever amount of time it's been, 10 years later, here we are.
Wow. And I mean, you did a lot of other extra work. You were an extra in The Blind Side too, right?
When I first started, I did The Crazies, which was the first movie that I did. And I actually ended up driving to Atlanta. Well, not Atlanta, Macon for that, or part of that. And then me and a friend did The Blind Side because that we were just looking for things after that. I drove to Atlanta for that. And then I drove to Atlanta a couple more times for extra work. And then it just became problematic to keep doing that because it's a long trip to make $64, which is what extras make, 64 over 8. It was fun, but I needed to move beyond that, so I moved to Atlanta in 2013, and I've been here since. But yeah.
Kind of a big difference from a small area to move towards the heart of Atlanta, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to do it, and down where I'm from, there's not a whole lot to do. There's like a movie theater and like Walmart. That's basically it. And I don't, that's fine. I grew up in a small town, and I enjoyed my time there. But in order to do anything or like progress as a filmmaker or any kind of entertainment, you got to be somewhere else, honestly. And so I just chose to move to Atlanta, and I've had a lot. You gain access to things, but you also lose access to things because it's a lot easier to shoot movies where that no one else shoots them. Because people are a lot more likely to give you access to things that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to get, which is good for South Georgia. But in Atlanta, everybody's like, "Oh, The Walking Dead shot here, so you should pay us $10,000 to rent our bar." Cool. I don't have that, but
So you have more access to things, but then it's because if somebody else already shot somewhere, they maybe value themselves too high, or you're potentially also competing for space if somebody else is trying to get to somewhere as well, or.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta is basically like number 2, or might even be number 1 now for production. So a couple of maybe 5 or 10 years ago when it first started, maybe it was a little bit different, but now Atlanta is an established industry hub. So if you're an indie filmmaker with no budget most of the time, you're competing with big budget productions for locations, and everybody wants top dollar for that stuff. Whereas if you go to South Georgia, where no one ever shoots there, you can go to a restaurant and it's like, "Hey, can we film here?" They're probably going to say yeah, because the spectacle of having a film crew come in and just the coolness of that to them is still a thing down there. Whereas up here, it's like, "Oh, someone's filming here." I can drive down the street and see 10 yellow signs on my way to the store, for something filming. So it's not as prevalent down there. So it's more of people get more excited about it.
I mean, that makes sense. And then, coming from a smaller area to Atlanta, how was it in terms of, basically, starting to make, independent film, starting your studio? How did you go about being able to put that together for yourself?
Well, it all started off, I became unemployed. And
Heck of a start, man.
yeah, I became unemployed, and I was like, I can either go and look for another job, which I didn't want to do, or I can take my severance pay and make that last as long as it will, and work on what I really want to do. So I started writing a script for a feature horror movie called Exit 101, which is terrible and you shouldn't watch it. But that was the first film that I ever made, and I did that while I was still in South Georgia, and it's all South Georgia. They're not even actors. Most of the people in it aren't actors because there are no actors in South Georgia. All the crew are just people that volunteered, that just thought it would be fun to do. And it just kind of like snowballed from there, and I just continue to keep doing that, and I try to do better every time, increase the production value, and I learn more and more every time I do a project. So it's like now 10 years later, I'm not doing the same stuff that I did back then.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, we try and learn, from everything that we do.
Hmm.
Um, with your newer projects and things like that, is it a lot easier to find help? Is it a lot easier to find actors since, like you said that obviously Georgia's huge for filming. So is there more of a pool to people to work on projects and things since you're there?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Especially for actors, especially if you're looking for actors, because of the fact that the industry is so big here now. Everybody's moving here, so like we got actors coming here from LA because they think that they'll have an easier time here. So there's a lot more actor. There's a larger acting pool. The actors here are incredibly skilled, and so you're getting good people when you cast for things here. Crew is a toss up because on independent or like low budget things, it's difficult to find people who are good at their job, while also not paying them very much, because the people here who do things like sound, um, that's probably the main one, hair and makeup and things like that, they know what they're worth, and so you have to like sort of like give them other motivation to want to work on your tiny budget project, because they can go work on Avengers 10 or something, um, and make a lot more money. So, and they're going to do that anyway. But so you have to like work with them to sort of make it fun for them. So they'll want to help you, but also, allow them the flexibility to be free to do the other stuff that's more lucrative to them.
That makes sense. Do you find with the actors, since there's such an influx, and I didn't know that people, it makes sense though, but that people were coming out from like California to try and break into the film industry by you. Do you have issues with actors in kind of the same regard, or is it just, a lot of people are hungry for the opportunity to build, to build up their demo reels and things like that? Or is it just kind of like a mix where sometimes you'll run into some people who, oh, I could be working on this, that, and the other, and some people who are just, excited to work, or how does that balance play out?
I think it's kind of just all over the board, honestly, because most of the people here are really good about understanding what it is they're working on, and so you don't get a lot of people. They understand what this project is. They wouldn't have signed on to do it if they didn't. Every now and then you'll have someone who kind of acts like they're too good for what you're doing, but usually you can weed them out before you ever get on set with them. I try to anyway. So I don't think so. I don't think that's been a huge problem for us. Most of the actors, either I'm friends with them already, the as big an industry as we have here, it's very small community. So like everyone knows everybody. So if you came up to Atlanta and you ran into someone who works in film and you said, "Hey, do you know Joseph Lavender?" They probably do, because everybody runs in the same circles. And the same can be said for other people. If you ask me if I knew someone, it's kind of like the Ghostbusters thing that you were just talking about a few minutes ago, where all of us know each other. We're into the same thing. There's a good chance there's not that many of us. It's a very niche thing that we're into, so we all know each other.
And just what Joseph's alluding to is before we started recording, I noticed the Ghostbusters stuff, and then just in doing my homework, know that he's one of the founders of Atlanta Ghostbusters, and know people out here for Ghostbusters of Virginia, and so we have some overlap in circles just from those projects.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a good segue to that. How did you get involved in starting Atlanta Ghostbusters?
Well, it is a funny and sort of odd story because we used to. Okay, so in Georgia, there used to be one Ghostbusters group called the Georgia Ghostbusters. Everyone who was a Ghostbusters fan in Georgia was all in that one group. Somewhere along there, and I won't get into the specifics because it doesn't matter to this story. But somewhere in there, the Atlanta people and the more southern people decided it would be better if we were two separate entities. Mostly because all of the events that we were doing were in Atlanta versus all of the events they were doing were in South Georgia. So some of us spurred off and said, "Hey, let's make an Atlanta Ghostbusters." We're not affiliated with the Georgia Ghostbusters. Really, we're all friends with each other now, and such. And I just happened to be one of the first people that I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. It was me, another guy named Joe, and two other former members of the Georgia Ghostbusters who decided we should do Atlanta Ghostbusters just because we all lived in Atlanta, and that just made sense to us. And so that's kind of how that went about. That's really summarized. It's much longer, but we don't need to get into that.
Gotcha. And just because there's an overlap of people that I know in Virginia that obviously are interested, in everything that you guys do. Just for those who maybe don't know, the different Ghostbusters contingents around the U.S. What's kind of the purpose? What kind of projects do you guys all work on? What's the major scope of it?
So the general idea of it is that we're just kind of a fan group of people who do Ghostbusters costuming. We make the props and build the props and things, and we also do charity work, which sometimes means helping people raise money by going and doing events dressed up in character. We do parades, just whatever, just good things for the community is what I think we mostly stand for. And I'm pretty sure Jamie and his crew, Virginia, they do the same. It's very similar to what we do. We have a roster of people who are they're all fans of the movie. We all have costumes and things we've made and built. We're not super strict on like I don't know if you're familiar with the 501st for Star
Yes.
Wars. They kind of do the same kind of stuff, but they're way more strict on costuming and things. It has to meet a certain standard and all that stuff. We don't do any of that. It's just like, if you like Ghostbusters and you want to look silly and do some fun stuff, that's what we do.
And the 501st is the stormtroopers that you guys might see at the conventions and stuff, and also do community events and things like that. So you've probably seen them. You've probably seen any of the various Ghostbusters contingencies, both very, very popular out at events.
Yeah,
and
we
then,
cross paths a lot. Mm-hmm.
And then you guys, there's also been a bunch of different fan films and other things that you guys have all worked on as well, right?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the different Ghostbusters groups kind of do their own spin of what a fan, their Ghostbuster fan films, and it's really cool because Sony is pretty lax on their fan film. Like they don't really mess with you too much, for copyright stuff. I know Disney and some of the other Disney's nuts about it. Yeah, they don't want they don't want you to do certain things. But Sony actually provided digital assets and things because they knew we were making fan films. We're like, here, have some stuff to use. Obviously, you can't make money off of any of that stuff. And whenever the 2016 movie the all-female Ghostbusters was before it came out. I decided I wanted to do a web series because I was kind of like most people were not happy that they were doing a reboot. I didn't care that they were females. I cared that they were not continuing the in the same universe, that they were like completely rebooting it, and that the original Ghostbusters never existed.
I think that's a lot of people's actual main problem with that film.
I think
And the
so too.
quality of it.
Yeah, I think it got way more hate than it honestly deserved. Like, I don't dislike it. I have it on DVD and I've watched it a bunch of times. The Atlanta Ghostbusters went and saw it, on opening night, and we got free tickets and all that stuff. And we made a big deal about it. But most people's problem with it was never that they were females. Not anybody who was a rational thinking fan of Ghostbusters. Most of us didn't like it because we wanted to see the continuation of the original series. If they had passed the torch to them, the original Ghostbusters had passed the torch to these new female Ghostbusters, all of us would have been fine with that. It was the fact that they completely erased the original universe in favor of, so now we're all excited about Ghostbusters Afterlife because that's what we wanted. And the I was saying all that to get to the fact that the web series that I did was basically exactly that. We decided to make a web series that took place 30 years after the original or the last movie. And what happened to the Ghostbusters and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny because there's some people who say that the plot of the new Ghostbusters that's coming out is very similar to my web series, and we had all of that idea first because that was several years ago. But I think it's really cool if that's where they got it. I don't know if that's where they got it from or if it's just a good idea, so more than one person thought about it. But yeah.
Could be happenstance, could be jacking your stuff, but either way, it's cool to see out there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean that's what I'm excited for. But kind of circling back to where we started with the Marks,
Mm-hmm.
your newest project. Now that we kind of understand, kind of what the community and what things are like out by you, and then obviously your ties to wrestling, what made that kind of the project that it is. Obviously you have the wrestling background, but what sparked the idea to make it, and then how do you kind of go about that project in terms of putting it together and what goes into it?
Mm-hmm. So originally, and this will also allow me to tell you the story of why we changed the name. Originally this movie was called Suplex back in 2016, 2015. I had written a feature-length comedy about indie wrestling called Suplex. It was about an IT guy who gets fired from his job and decides to pursue a career in professional wrestling by working his way up the indie ranks. And it was very autobiographical because I used to be an IT guy. So a lot of it was based on how I ended up as a wrestler. Well, we started filming that. We got about a quarter of a way through it and realized we had bit off more than we could chew. And so it got shelved for like 2 or 3 years. And then I was like, man, I really liked that script, and I really want to make, because I had been doing nothing but horror. I've done nothing but horror since I started, and I was like, I want to do comedy. I think we would do a really good comedy. And I know all about wrestling. No one has done a wrestling comedy outside of Ready to Rumble.
With David Arquette.
And that's the only one that I know of. And it's arguably whether that's a good movie or not. We could go, the whole thing could be about Ready to Rumble if you wanted to have a podcast episode about whether or not Ready to Rumble is a good movie or not. I enjoyed it, but that's because I'm a Sting mark, or I'm a WCW mark. Anyway, so I was like, okay, we should. I'm gonna revisit this script and figure out a way to make it so that we can make it on a budget that I know that we can do, so we don't get stuck like we did before. So I was like, how can we make this cheaper? And so I basically decided, no one's done anything with backyard wrestling. So I was like, we don't need giant venues and things. We can just film in people's backyards. So I came up with the idea of basically taking the same concept and just translating it to a back or a guy who somehow ends up losing his job, and he gets sucked into this backyard wrestling organization that happens to be run by the daughter of his like favorite pro wrestler of all time. And then there's the whole shenanigans and stuff they go through. But that all got changed because once we started shooting, we got 3 days into shooting, and the lead actor that we had cast to play Mark, which is where the title comes from, the Mark. It's a play on words. If you're a wrestling fan, you know what a Mark is. So his name was Mark, and he was a Mark. So it was fitting for the movie to be called The Mark. A lot of people were like, what does that mean? But if you watch wrestling, then you would know. And so, but the reason why we changed it to The Marks is because on the third day of shooting, we had some schedule conflicts with the lead actor. We had already shot all of this footage with him, and he was unable to finish the rest of the movie. So we took like a weekend break, me and my co-writer, Jonathan Four Reels. That's, I don't know if that's his real name or not. We had to put our heads together, and we're like, what are we going to do? We've already shot all this footage. We can't, like, this is not happening right now. And we rewrote the entire movie in a weekend and changed the entire plot to revolve around the daughter instead of Mark. And we just kind of like made him a side character and made it into more of an ensemble piece. And honestly, we were forced to do that, but the movie that we have now is much better than what we would have had if we had shot the original script, if that makes sense, even though we were forced to make those changes because of, you know, stuff that happens. And that's how the film industry works. You never know what's going to happen. As far as how we got everything together, I had just finished my feature, or finished filming or releasing the last horror movie that I had done. And I had some money saved up, and we had raised some. I had some friends who were investors and things, plus the connections in the wrestling community. So I was able to get places to shoot for free. And we were talking to Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner was almost in the movie. That never actually happened, but we were very close.
Did the Steiner math not work out?
It did not. It was like 33.33% off, you know, or something. But yeah, because we were gonna shoot in their Shoney's. You know that they own a Shoney's, and
I did not know that.
They own a Shoney's. Him and or Scott owns it in Ackworth, Georgia, very close to where I live. And so we contacted them and said, hey, we want to shoot in you guys' Shoney's. And they were up for it, you know, but we could never get them to commit to anything. They said that they would do it, but nothing ever came of it. We also almost had Daphne, and she actually came down to shoot. Daphne, the
Daphne
WCW.
Unger from WCW. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. So when I wrestled, I used to work for a promotion called Peach State Wrestling down in Cordial, Georgia, run by a promoter named Ben Masters, and he's been doing wrestling since probably before I was born. But I met her doing one of his shows, and so I wasn't necessarily friends with her, but my stunt coordinator runs action wrestling out of Tyrone, Georgia. Shout out to them because they put on really good shows. So if you want to go see good indie wrestling in Georgia, go and watch action wrestling. But he knows her really well, and and my other stunt coordinator knew her really well. So we were like, hey, well, let's talk to her. We were going to get her to play the main female character's mom in the movie, and she was going to do it. But she came down the first day of shooting, and I don't know what happened, but she was not happy to be there. And so that just didn't end up panning out. I think she's awesome, you know.
Yeah, stuff happens.
It just you know, something happens, stuff happens, and we even came back and we're like, do we want to try to revisit that, try to do that? And we're like, maybe not, you know. It wasn't enough of a boost to the film that we thought that it would make a difference. And I think one of the good things about the movie now is that it kind of like stands on its own. We're not trying to go look at these famous wrestlers that we have, or look at these famous wrestlers that were famous like 10, 20 years ago. You know, it's fun, and I think it would have been cool to have some of that stuff. And we still have some, just not, we actually have Danny Jordan, who's been on AEW like a lot lately. And she hadn't done anything before that time. So a lot of these, and she came out of action wrestling too. So Georgia is really, really big for independent wrestling. And a lot of those people, like a lot of people I'm friends with, I've seen on TV because they're like making waves now, I remember when I first started training back, I can't remember what year it was. AJ Styles, he was just an indie wrestler. Like I remember going to shows, and I remember training and like running into people, and like when he became the huge star that he is now, I was like, wow, like that's just crazy. Like, cause I remember him when he was a nobody like I was,
It's amazing how it changes. I've brought this up on a couple past episodes, but that's why I'm interested in wrestling. As I lived in Ohio for a while, and Ohio is pretty hot for wrestling, probably more so back 15, 20 years ago, because a lot of the WWE developmental areas were there. I trained at Heartland Wrestling. I trained with, if you remember Jimmy Yang at all.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I trained with him and John Moxley, which is probably, I guess it's the biggest person that I can name on the current landscape that I've worked with. But, like you said with Styles, it's amazing. You work with people and you don't know that they're going to blow up or be as big as they are. And it's amazing to see, that you can point to somebody like that and
you can tell though,
yeah.
like you can like, you might not be able to predict the future, but you can look at someone and go, yeah.
Because they have it.
They have it. Yeah, they have whatever it is, and you can tell that they have it. And that's part of the reason why I sort of got out of it, because I was like, I don't know if I have it or not. I guess I don't, clearly. But you can tell when someone has it. Someone that I know that trained at a training school here won the what title was it? The NXT. Was it North American Championship like last night?
Oh,
like,
Leon Ruff.
Yeah. Like he's from here. So like it's just crazy seeing all these people that I know on TV and becoming big stars. And I'm glad Danny is on AEW, because if they see her in the movie, maybe they'll recognize her, and that'll give us a boost of of publicity. Maybe not. I don't know.
You got her first major appearance, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was we shot all of that before. Like she was, I mean, I guess she was pretty prominent in the indie circuit, but I wasn't super familiar with her at the time. Of course, I had been out of the game for so long, and she works at, or she did work at DDP Yoga, which is all his headquarters is here.
Wow.
And so I remember when she came to set, I was wearing a Raven shirt. I have a old WCW Ravens flock shirt, and I was wearing it. She's like, "I like your shirt," and I was like, "Thanks." She's like, "Yeah, I work with him," and I was like, "Are you serious?" Apparently, he works also at DDP Yoga. So, and we also even talked to him. We almost had him in the movie, but it's really difficult.
Legitimately in my top 5 of all time. I loved Raven.
Yeah, me too. I was like, I'm a mark for all of those, odd WCW stables. That's like, what even is this? I remember when I was wrestling for a very short period of time, and you probably wouldn't be able to tell now, but for a short period of time, I went under the name Trent Kidman and pretended that I was Billy Kidman's like cousin or something, and like did the whole like looking like I'm homeless look or whatever, because my hair, when I was younger, I looked kind of like him. So, but yeah, that's a fun tidbit of wrestling.
You can still see it with the hair. I didn't get to tell this story on any of the other podcasts, so I'll segue with that. I have met Billy Kidman.
Oh, nice.
I went to WrestleMania 20 in New York, and going to LaGuardia to fly home, I ran into Billy Kidman, who was married at the time to Tori Wilson. Mm-hmm. And and this is on me. This story is on me. one of the biggest cardinal sins, whether it's wrestlers, athletes, actors, anyone, is do not bother them when they're in the middle of eating food. Just as common courtesy, do not do that. But I was a teenager and I was super excited, legitimately more so because Tori was there, and she wasn't even in makeup and everything, and still looked stunning. I was so excited to see her. I had my little WrestleMania program in my hand and I wanted them so badly to sign it, and I just ran up and looked like a moron. And Billy Kidman was not at all thrilled.
He was not happy.
No. I was over there with my friend, and he's like, "Could you just please come back when we're done? Like, this, just not now." Like, with like an FU look on his face. But Tori was like the sweetest human being ever. She's like, "No, it's okay. I'll sign this for you." And then he like begrudgingly followed. And I was like, "I'm so sorry," but that like made my entire trip.
Yeah, I can see I saw where that was going when you said that, and that's, I mean, I think wrestlers in general like are more prone to be that way than even like other forms of entertainment. Like I've run into actors that are that way. When I met Jason David Frank from Power Rangers the first time, like he's like my hero, and like when I met him the first time, he was just a complete douche to me.
Really?
And yeah, and I was like I was so upset. Basically what had happened is that I had gotten to his, like, this was his last appearance of that convention, and I was dressed as him. I had on the Green Ranger costume and everything, and so everybody in lines were like, "Dude, he's gonna love this." And I kind of look like him too, so like I had that going for me, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be great. It's the greatest day of my life." I get up to the front of the line, and his handler is like, apparently you can't even like talk to them without buying something. Like that's just how they operate. Like you have to go, "This is what I want to pay for," and then you can talk to them. And so he was like, it was cash only. I didn't have any cash. I didn't realize it was cash only. And so he's like, "You got to have cash." And I was like, "Well, I don't have any cash." And they're like, "Well, go to the ATM." And I was like, "Okay," but he's about to leave, and I'd already stood in line for like an hour. He's like, "Well, I'll tell you what, go to the ATM, come right back, and I'll let you cut back in line. And because you're dressed as Green Rangers, I'm not gonna not know who you are." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So I go back to the ATM, only to find that the line for the ATM was longer than the line for Jason David Frank, and I couldn't cut in that line. So I had no cash. So I went all the way back to the line, and I was like, "Hey, there's no way I'm going to be able to get any money in time. Can I just at least say hello?" I was going to get an autograph, but can I just say hey? And he was like, "Yeah, that's fine." So he lets me go up to the table, and Jason David Frank looked at me like I was crazy because I wasn't going to buy anything. And he like kind of just blew me off, and I was like, "Okay, that wasn't a good experience." But then a couple of years later, I was like had all this pent up aggression because of that whole experience. A couple of years later, I met him again at the same convention because I was like, "Let me try this again." And he was super nice to me. He gave me he put me on his Instagram. Like he did like a selfie, and like I was dressed as Beetlejuice. That's part of the reason. But he put me on his Instagram. He gave me extra pictures and took more pictures than what like he would have. I don't know if maybe he was just having a bad day that day, because sometimes everybody has bad days. So I try not to think about it too much if I have a bad experience, because like I have to remember that they've seen thousands of people today, but I also think that, yeah, if you encounter any kind of celebrity, and I say this to people even like as actors, when you're working on set, because whenever you're an extra, people have a tendency to fangirl when they see celebrities and stuff. And I tell people, it's like they're working. They're there to do a job, and like there's a time and place for the whole, getting autographs and stuff, and it's really difficult to do, I know. But sometimes you have to go, "Yep, this is not the time." But I think probably if I was a teenager, if I was a young kid, and like I saw, Sting in an Applebee's eating, I'm shy, but I would have went over there and interrupted him too, probably. So
I
I'm not
think
gonna.
it's hard to gauge because especially like if you so like for my purposes, I was like, I don't know, 14, 16, something like that. It's different when you're mentality of a kid versus, like now I'm 34. So like I'm excited. Like if I go to conventions and stuff and get super geeked out over certain people, but I'm not going to bother people or bring that much energy in like a space where somebody's eating or taking a leak. Like you hear all these stories like, yeah, I was at the urinal whipping it out. And then this dude's like, can you sign it? And you're, what?
What do you want me to sign?
This is not a good place. So just,
No.
and when you're a kid, you don't mean anything bad by it. It's just,
yeah, you haven't developed the ability to understand like social cues and understanding when is the right time to do something like that, which is typically not when people are eating,
no, it's not for the best. Did you ever get to meet Sting though, or is that
Oh
something?
yeah, I've met Sting. Yeah, I actually met him at Dragon Con. I met him and Ric Flair at Dragon Con a couple of years ago. I got a picture with him. He was nice. I actually talked to him about wrestling. I told him I used to wrestle, and he asked me a bunch of questions about where I wrestled, and like it was pretty cool. Like it was weird because there was not like you would think there would be a line or a lot of people at his booth or his table or whatever, but like I literally walked up and was like had like a 20-minute long conversation with him, which was really cool. It made it like he's like literally my favorite wrestler of all time. So like that was pretty much a childhood, bucket list item checked off.
This goes to your point though that sometimes depends on somebody's day because he was at, I want to say it was GalaxyCon here in Richmond, and I did get to meet him. I don't remember if it was GalaxyCon or if it was at AwesomeCon in DC. I met him last year, and he did not care to speak or do anything. He wasn't unfriendly, but he wasn't like,
yeah, he wasn't going out of his way to be like more than just, hey, how you doing kind of thing,
Yeah, I got to tell him that him versus Ric Flair was some of my favorite stuff from WCW. Me and you and 100,000 other people, but but it's all different experiences. It depends on the day, but I think one of my favorite. I can't say actors. I mean, I like him as an actor, but the position, if you ever go to a con, whenever we have cons again, Michael Rosenbaum, who is Lex Luthor on Smallville, and his podcast is honestly one of the reasons I started podcasting in the past couple months again. His approach to cons is people are paying a crap ton of money in a lot of cases to come to these. In some cases, that's somebody's vacation money, essentially. So whether it's person 1 or person 100 or 1,000, he wants to keep, giving the same type of experience, because it's not, if you're the 5,000th person in line, that's not your fault that you weren't like one of the first 10 people to meet somebody and get that interaction. But also, it's hard to keep up energy throughout a day. I mean, like, think about any job you've ever had, and I'm sure like days on set run long too, and your demeanor or personality can change. So that's also hard to do. It's a great mantra or mindset, but that's hard to pull off too.
They're there all day long, and you have to like sort of keep that in mind. I think that his mantra is good, and I think that's the way that everyone should try to be. I think it shouldn't matter if you're the first or the last person in line. You should treat everybody the same. But I also have never been in that position, so I don't know how I would be either if I was someone that was a guest at a convention and people were coming up to talk to me, and I might get annoyed too, because I have seen at various conventions, I have seen issues where the guests are really the problem, or when I say the guests, the con goers are the issue and not the celebrity, because they either want to monopolize their time, or they're just people that go to conventions are weird, obviously, because we go to them. But like, you stand behind people, you see the conversations that they have with these celebrities, and sometimes it's funny to me because like going back to Ghostbusters for a second,
Sure.
I've met Ernie Hudson, who plays Winston, like a dozen times. Like he's gone to dinners and stuff with us. Like it's, not a big deal. He's not anybody like we're just like us. It's Ernie Hudson, it's cool. But I've seen people ask him such just ridiculous questions, and it's always relating to like specific things in terms of like the props and like the costumes and stuff. And he's like, I don't know, man. Like he almost answers the questions as Winston. He's like, I don't know, man. I just work here. You know, he's like, they just paid me, and they said, here's this backpack, wear it. So he doesn't know.
He's not in the prop department analyzing, oh, and this is theoretically how this should work.
Yeah,
like,
he's like, this is cool. He thinks it's cool that we have all the stuff and how accurate and all of it is. But like, if you asked him what the neutrona wand was, or he doesn't know. He was an actor who was paid to portray a character. That is not important to him. He literally doesn't care. But he's appreciative that we like it that much, that we want to replicate it.
Well, of course. And just somewhat switching gears and kind of going back to the filmmaking, one thing that is interesting is, especially with indie filmmaking, you have to wear a lot of hats. How does that, I mean, you do producing, you do directing, you're a writer, you're an actor. The more roles that you have to take on a specific project, how does that, impact your involvement, I guess is the best way to put it. Because, I've heard actors on shows before, if they also have to, be a director in the same thing that they're acting in, they prepare for that differently than if they have to do one thing or the other. So how does the different hats you have to wear, impact the production of a movie?
So it impacts it a lot. And I can give you an example of that. And I've experienced this a bunch of times. So, and I will preface this by saying that the reason why I wear so many hats, sometimes it has to do with budget, and sometimes it has to do with it's out of necessity, as in you either can't rely on someone else to do it, so you got to do it. You just got to do it yourself. You always got to be prepared to do something yourself. If you're like trying to rely on other people, is not a good idea, because someone's going to drop the ball. And so I know how to do as much stuff as I know how to do because someone didn't do it. And so I had to learn out. When I edited my first feature, or when I did my first feature film, I was never supposed to edit that at all. I'm the director. I didn't direct the first movie technically that I made because I had no directing experience. So I brought someone else in who was a graduate of Full Sail in Orlando, and I was like, let me just learn from you. Let me just soak in all of the information I can from you. You direct. I'm going to act because that's what I want to. I want to be an actor. I wrote the script, but he directed it. It kind of flipped somewhere in there where he wasn't really doing the directing anymore, but that's a whole nother thing. But he was also supposed to edit it, and he got about, I don't know, a quarter of the way through it, and he started working so slow that we were never going to finish. We're never going to release the movie. And so I was like, dude, we got to do something, man. So like, I got a laptop and started, like, I was like, I don't know how to do this, but I'll figure it out. And so I started learning how to do that, and edited the rest of the movie. And as far as like on set trying to be a director and be an actor, it's really difficult. The second movie that I did, I was the director, I was the cinematographer, so I shot it, and I was an actor in it. I was not the main actor because I knew better than that. And it's a funny story. When you watch the movie, you'll see my character come and go because he's basically in all the scenes where it was impossible for me to also be the camera guy. and so it's like, I just started writing myself out of scenes, and he would just leave. He would just, I'm going to go sleep in the van. And like, he would just leave these scenes, and like, you would not see him for like 5 or 6 scenes later, and he comes back for like 2 seconds and says, oh, hey guys, I'm gonna go back to the van now. And so it's like, all of that was on purpose because it was just not possible for me to try to devote all of my time. It's like, you got to devote your time to one or the other. That's part of the reason why, even though this newest movie was sort of autobiographical in a sense, I was originally, thinking about possibly playing Mark myself, because I have a wrestling background, so I would be able to do all the wrestling stuff that it required. So that seemed like the easy choice. But then I was like, but I also want to direct, and I can't focus on directing if I'm also trying to act. Not if you're the main character. I mean, I know Quentin Tarantino does it,
Yeah.
To some level of success, and other people have done it. But I think it just, like, you can't focus on. You got to be able to focus on one thing, and if you want the rest of the movie to be good, you have to be able to delegate. Even on an indie set, you still need to try to delegate as much as you can. The more people doing different things, the less stress there is for you. But it is difficult, and I won't say that I've held the boom mic and done people's makeup, and I've edited until, I've if there's a job on an indie set, I've done it.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's important. That's important as an indie filmmaker to understand. And if you can do all of that stuff, because then you understand the people who do that job. You can understand and communicate with them better having the experience, because if you've never done it before, then it's like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm trying to talk to you or tell you because I don't know what you're doing, you know? So I think it gives me a better, and it even helps with acting, because I can, whenever I'm an actor, I can see from the point of view of the crew and the filmmakers. And so it helps them. I make their jobs easier because I understand everything they're doing, versus just being like clueless to where I'm supposed to stand or where the camera is or why we're doing this or why we're doing that. Cause like a lot of actors have no, like they're just actors and they don't have any sort of knowledge in terms of like why any of the film technical stuff is happening. But I understand that stuff. So it makes it much easier when I'm on set as an actor, because I'm aware of all of that.
You know how everything moves and what the parts and everything are. You know how the sausage is made, so to speak, versus just listlessly.
Yeah, it's like, why are we setting this? Why is this light over here? What is it for? Why is the camera set over here? And why do you want me to walk this way instead of this way? It's like an actor might go, well, why do you want me to do this? Like they might question it, but I understand why they're doing it, because I have the hands-on experience doing what it is, doing the very thing they're doing. So it helps me help them.
Is this something that, I mean, it sounds like it would be, so I'm not trying to ask rhetorically, but would you say for somebody that's trying to, get into acting or who wants to be an actor to like come on sets and like help do like, grip work or lighting or whatever else, just to get involved in that process so they understand everything, would you say that that would help somebody like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think whenever we were talking about when I first started, I was an extra. I think getting on set in any capacity that you can, if you're like interested in even if you're not interested in acting, even if you're interested in being crew, if you're interested in just filmmaking in general, get on set as an extra and just pay attention, just watch what everybody does. There's a lot of moving parts on a film set, and just being able to be in the middle of it and just watch what the grips are doing and watch what the sound guy is doing and watch what the makeup artists are doing, the script supervisor, the costumes. And, you see all of the interworking parts of a film, and you can learn and absorb a lot of information that will come in handy. I would say the vast majority of the knowledge that I have as far as how I do things on set came from just working on a bunch of different types of sets. And I wouldn't even just say go and be an extra in like these big Hollywood movies. Work on smaller stuff too, because by and large, when you're first starting out, that's what you're going to be working on. The student films, the film competition, 48-hour things, and you might work on a Ghostbusters fan film or something, and things like that. And the way those sets operate are different than a big Hollywood machine. They're similar, but there's less people. And sometimes, there's just less going on and it's not as crazy, and you can get a better sense of what your job is because everyone is communicating with everybody. And if you're just an extra, you're not allowed to talk to anybody anyway. So you can't go up to a crew member and be like, hey, I was wondering why are you doing, why are you shining that light in this direction, or whatever the dumb question you have for crew, because I don't have time to talk to you. But you can still learn a lot. And I think if you're just starting out, it's something that everybody should do. I don't think you should be working in film if you don't go be an extra at least once, because it gives you a lot of insight into the process. And it also teaches you one valuable thing. Movie sets are long hours. So if you can go sit in a tent for 12 hours, because usually that's what extras do for the majority of the time they're there. They're not really on set most of the time. They're sitting in a tent or in a holding area. If you can go do that and you can come back and say, I had a good time doing that, then you might be cut out for film. But otherwise, like, there's a million other things I think you should probably do, because you can make more money, and you got to do it because you like it.
100%. I think that's great advice. I know a lot of people, watch this podcast for entertainment purposes and things, and maybe have done some stuff or want to get into it. So I think that's a really good message for them. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
With the marks, I know we talked about coming out potentially early part of 2021 for update. I know the trailer's on there because I watched the trailer and I enjoyed it. For updates and to get more information on the movie, is blackflightstudios.com the best place to kind of keep tabs of what you do, or where should people check into to see your works and to get more information?
You can go there. All of that website links to all of our social media, which is going to be, you can go to Facebook, and it's going to be, I think it's The Mark Movie Rules. So like facebook.com/The Marks Movie Rules. The trailer is on there as well. We got an Instagram that I think is The Mark Movie, or it might be The Marks Movie. I should know this information.
It happens. It's I promote myself at the end of these things, and I forget my Twitter handle 90%.
I did spend a good amount of time this week revamping all of my websites so that you could just go to blackflightstudios.com and end up in all of those other places. So I think if you just go there and you want to see the trailer and stuff, because the trailer is on there as well on the homepage.
Yes.
And so you can get most of the information from there. And hopefully we're going to have some news on a release date and potentially where that's going to happen, on how that's going to happen soonish. I told my co-writer, Jonathan, for reals, that he needed, like, we gotta get this music done. He's a musician too, and he's got a parody like music group called Seth and Willie Fred, and they're doing most of the music. It's like Weird Al type stuff. They're doing the majority of the music. And I told him, I was like, we got to be done by Thanksgiving, bro. And he was like, I don't know if that's going to happen. And I was like, well, we got to
rush greatness, right?
You can't do it. You can't do it. But hopefully, we had a lot of convention appearances lined up, and all of those got canceled. So hopefully we'll just be able to pick those back up when we can go to conventions again.
Well, that'll be cool. We'll be able to, and I'll any information to pass along, I'll pop out on my stuff too, so anybody that follows congruently can stay in the loop on it. Is there any project, with so close to being done with this, do you start jumping into a mindset of what you want to do next, or do you let this kind of like digest, release, and then kind of worry about it?
My mind has been going there for quite some time. Like whenever a movie wraps and we get to the stages of nearly being done, I'm already working on whatever the next thing is going to be. Like, not fully, but I've already got ideas for things. I'm toying with the idea of doing a horror comedy about killer alpacas. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes.
The random killer animals. You got zombie beavers and murder.
I've seen that. I actually enjoyed that quite a bit.
And, there's going to be a moose jaws, and I think that's Kevin Smith's weirdness, but no, that sounds cool. I've appreciated kind of getting into a little bit more on your world, learning a little bit more about filmmaking and the process, talking about your movie, getting to talk wrestling is always a thrill for me. And then that con life, all the conventions and comic stuff is always a hit with me. And I love Ghostbusters, but I know we went through a whole bunch of different stuff, but is there anything that I didn't ask you or we didn't touch on that you wanted to get out there?
I don't know if we actually talked about what the movie was about, or if I gave like a synopsis of the plot. I think I like kind of bounced around what it was about.
You went through a brief synopsis when you were talking about what it was and then what it became.
But I don't think I gave like a just a generic, like, this is what the movie is about, for anybody who might be like, I don't know what this movie even is you guys are talking about. What is it about? Why would I want to watch it? But so the answer to that is that The Marks is a comedy in the vein of Clerks or Trailer Park Boys or Napoleon Dynamite. It's really odd. about a backyard wrestling organization called the Mosh Pit Wrestling Association, ran by Maggie Lightning, who is the daughter of a washed-up legendary professional wrestler named The Real Deal Jack Dixon, whom she has a really bad relationship with. He is trying to relive his glory days and move back into the spotlight, and she is basically in his shadow because she grew up as the daughter of a legendary pro wrestler. She's a wrestler herself, wants to be a professional wrestler, but she doesn't want to live that life. And so they have their little inner turmoil, while Jonathan Reels, her best friend, is trying to turn Mosh Pit Wrestling Association into the next WWE. And they sort of like clash because of all of that. So it's a very zany, very weird, like I said, it's very similar to Clerks in style and tone. So I've been calling it Clerks if it took place in South Georgia and was about a bunch of redneck people.
And it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Definitely, like we were saying, check out the trailer, blackflightstudios.com. And I will link everything in the description, so it's easy for you to just click, go, check it out, stay in the loop on everything. Joe, I can't thank you enough again for your time, man. I really appreciate you talking with me.
Absolutely. I had a great time.
All right, man. Well, best success to you. And we'll give this a standing 10 count until it comes out.
Let's do it.
All right, man. Thanks. I hope all of you really enjoyed that, and check out the trailer for Joe's movie, The Marks, which you can find. The description for blackflightstudios.com is going to be, well, not going to be, it is in the description here, as I point to nothingness, because I don't think I can embed an image at this point yet. I'm working, I'm learning, I'm trying here. But you can check out in the description to check that out. It definitely looks like a fun movie. You can kind of see once you watch the trailer what he's talking about in terms of like a Clerks-ish vibe if you were mixing it with backyard wrestling. So that's fun. I mean, that's my type of thing. So that's something to certainly check out. And, he's definitely somebody, with different projects and things going on that I'm sure you will see again on this podcast. And, keep having good content lined up. I keep mentioning this because I don't want it to be a surprise, but only going to do another episode or two here just because with holidays coming up, one, harder to do stuff, and then for me and for you, because I'm sure you have family time and things planned. If not, hopefully this podcast finds you and comforts you in the absence of said non-family time. Obviously, I say that jokingly, but people have stuff going on with COVID and travel is a little restricted, and maybe somebody is immunocompromised and you can't, be with a loved one directly. So, that is hard, especially this time of year. So, take comfort and solace in anything that you enjoy. I mean, that's why I do this podcast, is to have, conversations surrounding the things that, I love and enjoy. So, hopefully through osmosis or something that can absorb to you and you enjoy it too, which is hopefully why you're here, listening and watching this on YouTube, or, if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, and checking everything up to date on facebook.com/pointofjew, which hopefully you check out, and maybe eventually I'll figure out a website or something to centralize these 900 things going on. But Linktr.ee/THEJHirsch tends to be the hub of where all the links and things go for that matter. But yeah, so in terms of guests and things, really, I mean, I know I always say I'm excited because I genuinely am. I love hearing, people's stories and how they got into different things and learning more in-depthly, about entertainment, acting, writing, other people's, endeavors on their streams and social media and everything that involves entertainment, right? That's why we're here on Point of View. But have a cool guest lined up from animation, which sometimes you just ask people and they want to do stuff, which is awesome. Why not shoot your shot, right? So I'm excited for that guest. And then somebody going back to people I do know, somebody I used to work with has a really, really cool YouTube channel. And so we're going to get into kind of a sciencey and engineering world as part of a niche of entertainment, which I don't know. I grew up with Bill Nye, right? Magic School Bus and learning and all that kind of good stuff. So, hey, that'll be fun too. So excited about those guests. And then, yeah, after hopefully 2020 finally ends and we finally put close the books on that. You know, throughout the new year, I'll be trying to get some more guests, other varied avenues too. I promise I'm not specifically trying to have wrestling guests, but they're not all wrestling guests, right? Kevin was a specific wrestling guest. Brian was somebody who does gaming and likes wrestling games and who I've gone to wrestling shows with. And then, you know, Joe is making a movie that the topic is wrestling. The movie is based as a wrestling comedy. So it happens to just kind of weave its way in my life. So that's all I can say. But I hope you guys have been enjoying the guests. Like I said, you know, always I was busting on Brian, but in all honesty, you know, check out some of the past guests, you know, learn about different things that maybe, you know, you didn't know that you were into, because, you know, a lot of these people, all these people are subject matter experts and some really cool stuff involving entertainment. And that's why we do this, that, and have this weird lighting effect thing going on, which I couldn't figure out what was causing that, but that's why we do this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this week's episode. And like I said, great things lined up. Check me out on whatever platform is easiest for you. And hopefully you continue to enjoy my point of view. I'll see you guys next week.